All right, so evolution is a theory in science. So remember that a theory in science is a statement, an idea, or explanation of the natural world that is backed up by evidence, right? Many experiments, observations, and evidence. Um, so here are the evidence for evolution that evolution does occur, has occurred, and will continue to occur. So we have 8 things to go through as evidence that evolution occurs on Earth. So first, let's start with the fossil record, which for me is the biggest piece of evidence for evolution because there is an obvious transition from one species to another as we look into the fossil record. So, by definition, a fossil is just the remain or the traces of an organism that died a long time ago. Usually, it's been so long that actually those remains are rock and not even bone or shell anymore, but have been replaced with the minerals of the rock around them. So it has showed us that there are different types of organisms that have been on this earth at different times and places. And remember, this earth is really old, older than you can really truly imagine. Even when you think back to the dinosaurs, that was 65 million years ago. That is a long time ago. Like, hard for us to understand. So, how do we know how old fossils are? So we know how old fossils are a couple of ways. First of all, fossils are found in a rock called sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock is a rock that's made from sediment at the bottom of a river or an ocean. So sedimentary rock forms in layers, and obviously the layer at the top is going to be the newest layer, and the layer as you go down is going to get older and older and older. That's called superposition. Now, we have 2 ways of giving an age to a fossil. So if we were just using superposition, we could just say, hey, this fossil is at the top, therefore it is younger than this fossil, which is at the bottom. That one is older. That's called relative age. Absolute age, on the other hand, is the numeric age. How do we do that? Radiometric dating, right? So we talked about that earlier. Again, not probably radiocarbon dating, but radiometric dating using other radioactive isotopes that are found in the rocks around the fossils that we find. So then we can give it an actual age, an actual time of how old it is. Again, not to the day, not even to the hundreds of years, but to the millions of years. That's what we'd say. Oh, well, dinosaurs went extinct about 65 million years ago. Not 65,800,200, nothing like that detail. Just within millions of years. So, what do we know, or what can we see in the fossil record, or what inferences can we make? Number 1, different organisms lived at different times. Number 2, today's organisms are different from those in the past. Number 3, fossils found in adjacent rock layers are more like each other than fossils found more further apart. Number 4, by comparing the fossils and the rocks around the planet, we can infer when and where different organisms existed. And actually, it tells us about the geology and the environment of the Earth as well. So fossils tell us a lot because, if you find a shark out here in San Diego, a shark fossil out here in Rancho San Diego, and you're like, whoa, well, how did this shark get out here? Well, that's because that would have meant that at some point in the past, Rancho San Diego was under the ocean. Now it's not under the ocean anymore. So that also tells us a lot of stuff too. So I want you to look at the fossil record because there is a definite order of what we see on the planet. And we've already kind of talked about early early on, we have, so I want you to actually look on the side here, and I know always my little bar gets in the way, but on the side here, this is millions of years ago, and we're only going back to 650 million years ago. So when we talked about archaea and cyanobacteria and stromatolites, those were 3.5 billion years ago. But we don't see multicellular life until about 650 million years ago. So before that was like all single-celled organisms for billions of years. So keep that in mind as well. Multicellular life has only been around about last 650 million years. Now, again, millions of years, millions, not thousands, millions, a long time, takes a long time. But everything started in the ocean. I want you to know that. Everything started in the ocean. We talked about the ozone layer. So in the ocean, we have very simple ocean animals. Then we see the first chordate. A chordate is something that has a backbone, or at least when it's a larva form, and then sometimes they don't grow with a backbone, but chordate is like your first vertebrate. So then you have your first fish, and then you have a big diversification. You see this picture right here? This is a picture of an ammonite. You know, it looks like a squid. There's a very common fossil we find is the shell that the little squid thing lived in. So we have, other things that live in the ocean like octopus and squid, fish. Then look about between 400 and 450 million years ago, first vascular land plants. So that's the kind of plants we know of today. So our first kind of land plants. Now in the ocean, what's interesting is that these first fish did not have a mouth or a jaw. I guess they had a mouth because they had a hole, but they didn't have a jaw, like with teeth that open and close. So up here is like when you first get jawed fish, and they get really, really more complex. And then you also get your first thing that comes out to land is an amphibian. Now think about this, right? Fish live underwater. Amphibians live both in the water and on the land. So they're the good in between. Then we're starting to see like more complex plants evolve, like trees. And now we're going to see amphibians evolve into reptiles. So reptiles are going to hang out on land, and they start to get diversified. It just means like more different kinds of reptiles out there. We do have extinction throughout this whole time. So this is our first major extinction about 250 million years ago of multicellular life. We did talk about oxygen almost killing off the prokaryotes early on, but so our first major extinction. Then because of that, that's how dinosaurs started to evolve, because basically extinctions actually open up evolution, because now there's no competition and we see a lot of diversification. So our first dinosaurs kind of develop. Our first mammals at this time are going to be little teeny tiny things like mice, rodents, those type of things. Dinosaurs just start growing huge, right? And getting all kinds of different dinosaurs. And they're going out, look, first birds that evolved from dinosaurs. You have your first flowering plants. So imagine this, before this point, no flowers. Flowers did not exist on planet Earth until, about 150 million years ago. So that's kind of interesting too. And then we have our first primates, right? Those would be like monkeys. And like non-monkeys are chimpanzees, apes, monkeys and apes. So, and then we all know about the asteroid. The dinosaurs, which ruled the land, the mammals and the primates, they lived on the side. They got wiped out because they were so big, and the change in the environment really did not allow them to survive it. Other things did survive. Mammals survived. Birds survived. Flowering plants survived, right? A lot of things survived, but some things went out with the dinosaurs. And once the dinosaurs left, basically it let mammals get bigger and bigger, and they got huge. By the Ice Age, we had very large mammals. But towards the end of the Ice Age, those large mammals did die out, and now we're kind of left with the mammals we have today. Humans might have been involved with the extinction of large mammals at the end of the Ice Age. So humans, about 1.82 million years ago, start showing up on Earth. And then we've kind of obviously evolved since then. You've probably heard of something like a Neanderthal, which is a different species of early human that did not survive. We are called Homo sapiens sapiens. And so we are the survivors of human evolution at this point. So again, the fossil record tells us a huge story of evolution. All right, transitional species. So often, again, most people, when they want to doubt evolution, they're like, there's just no way you can go from a fish to something that has 4 legs and walks around the earth, right? And so that's always the big thing. We're missing a lot of pieces of the fossil record because fossils get destroyed and disappear forever. So we only have what we have. And so a lot of times we're missing gaps between millions of years, and it's like, oh, how did we go from this to this? How? And so we always are looking for those transitional species to kind of prove that, yes, this is the order of the evolution. And so this was a big one. We were trying to figure out how we went from fish to amphibian, the first tetrapods, and we finally did discover that transitional fossil. And that's also an HHMI video you can watch if you like to kind of see that discovery. All right, biogeography. So we saw in the video about Wallace and the Wallace line. This is the Wallace line, where he discovered that all of the mammals over here are what we call placental mammals, which means that they give live birth, like they actually carry the baby inside, attached by a placenta. That's what we are, placental mammals as human beings. And then all of these are marsupial mammals, right, which have the pouch. So really early in development, the baby is born and then lives in the pouch until it gets big enough to come out into the world. So it's a different way for the baby to develop. And it is obvious that this must be caused because of geographic location. And these islands were probably all together at one point, and all the marsupials that evolved ended up on these islands. And then all the land on this side was together, and that's how the placental mammals evolved over here, and how there's just 2 separate groups of mammals like that. Now, another complicated thing is something that we do see. It doesn't really prove evolution so well. It actually proves like more of a that environment can choose the same characteristics in 2 different places. And so that's interesting as well, because you can see that flightless birds evolved separately on South America and Australia, probably for the same reasons, the lack of a large predator that would kill you, so you don't have to fly, or being big enough that any predators that would want to kill you, you're big enough to fend off. So we see both of those things. We can see that maybe they all evolved together and then separated across the earth, or maybe they evolved separately but in similar directions because of natural selection. All right, now another real big thing that tells us that we were all related to each other is the fact that we're not very unique, especially among the mammals. So these are all mammals, right? So these are all mammals. That we're a mammal, cat is a mammal, a whale is a mammal, a bat is a mammal. And as mammals, we have very similar plans. Like our bones are very similar in terms of, if we're comparing the front leg to the human arm, the front leg of a whale is its flipper. The front arm of a bat is its wing. And then we could compare our back legs too, because our back legs also very similar. But you could see the coloration here and how basically we have the same bone pattern, except for the size of the bones have changed. So some of those bone sizes are changed, but the bones are still there. And that just shows us that we're all related to each other. And basically by mutation, we have the changes in the bone structure and size, but it's not a new invention. We don't like mutation doesn't like just create a brand new way of doing things. It just changes structure and size. So this proves that mammals are related to each other, that we have a common ancestor, that we came from something that had these bones, right? We came from an organism that had those bones and that structure, and we've just evolved from that common ancestor. All right, so like I was saying, I was just showing you that in general, like we were comparing the front, the part that's closest to the head, it all matches. If we compared the hind legs, we'd also get the same match. All right, another really compelling thing that shows us that we're all related to each other is actually called embryology, which is what do we look like when we first, after the fertilized egg, when we're an embryo or a larva, which is for other organisms, we call it a larva. So this is what, like a lamprey is a jawless fish. So we were talking about those early jawless fish. Then we have the jawed fish, dogfish, and then a gar, which is a type of fish, salmon, lungfish, which, is a fish that has lungs instead of gills. This is going to be an amphibian. Well, that might be a fish. I'm not sure. This is an amphibian, though. And then we have a snake, so a reptile. Then we have a chicken, a bird. Then we have a possum, which is a marsupial, right? A marsupial mammal. And then we have cat, bat, and human, which we are all placental mammals. So look at what we look like in the beginning. Kind of the same, right? And then in the middle, like the fish and the amphibians, they kind of stay looking the same. But the reptile and all of us, we kind of look different. But then look at among us, we kind of look closer together, right? And then, the late stage, you start looking like you're supposed to look like as an adult. And so then we look very different. But again, it shows that we all kind of came from a jawless fish, right? Eventually, we've evolved into getting all the way to human being. Vestigial structures is another one. So we have body parts that have no function now as humans, but a lot of animals do. A lot of animals have examples of bones that they don't use anymore or organs they don't need. So snakes and whales both have some hip bones that don't even stick out of the body. They're kind of just in the body. And they are smaller bones that would show that both snakes and whales, their ancestor had 4 legs, and now whales look like they only have 2 front arms, no legs. And snakes don't look like they have any front arms or back arms, right? Like they're just a body. But they came from something that had legs because we see the leftover of it. In humans, we have body hair that shows that we used to have probably fur. We have a tail bone underneath. Like normally you're not born with a tail, although some babies are. Shows you that we evolved from something that had a tail. We have wisdom teeth. Those are extra teeth because our jaw is getting smaller, but we came from an animal that had jaw that was bigger than it is today. So our teeth are not fitting anymore. We have an appendix, which we don't seem to need anymore. So there's a lot of things that show that we came from animals that look different, that we evolved from animals. Also, the other thing we can do is just look at our DNA and our RNA. And if we compare the amino acid sequences of our DNA, when we compare it, this is actually how we figure out how closely related we are or distantly related we are. So closely means like closer to us, distant further away, like it's many more years ago, many more millions of years ago in the past, or is it closer? So we can look at a lot of different proteins. One would be cytochrome C. So we can look at all the mammals, and all mammals have this protein, cytochrome C. And then we compare the amino acid sequence. And what we can see is that monkeys and humans have one nucleotide that's different. Humans and turtles have 19 that are different. So monkeys and humans, more closely related. Humans and turtles, distantly related. This is another chart. This is a chart of amino acid sequences in hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is our red blood cells. All of us have red blood cells. All these mammals have red blood cells. So that's not different. But then when we look at our red blood cells, we can see some of the differences. Obviously, this is only 4, but this is what ours looks like. And then look at what a gorilla's looks like. Look what a chimpanzee's looks like. It's the same as ours. Look what a zebra's looks like. Look what a horse looks like. So the horse and the zebra, they look kind of the same, right? They're just missing this one change between the horse and the zebra. So the horse and the zebra are related. And you can tell the gorilla, the chimpanzee, and the human are very related because they're have the same 3. And then the human and the chimp are even closer than the human and the gorilla. So that's how this works. Same kind of picture, but now we can go even further back into time. So remember that jawless fish is one of the first to evolve, and then you have amphibians and birds and mammals and primates, which is us. So you can see here that to the jawless fish, the lamprey, only 14% the same. We're really different now. It's been 500 million years. So long time ago. Right? And then the frog, then the chicken, then the mouse, then the rhesus monkey, which is a primate, and then us. This shows you, this matches the fossil record too. Our DNA matches the fossil record. It tells us there's an order. There was an order, and we all evolved slowly over time from some beginning ancestor to what we are today. And then we have coevolution. So this actually just shows that you can see that we are evolving, and we evolve with things that we live with too, and how the environment selects, how natural selection really works, because it will naturally select for things to occur between all the species that live there. And we can see that coevolution. So notice that sometimes it might be a counter adaptation, like one species is like trying to get away from another, and so then you have this counter adaptation to like even the score in a way. Human antibiotic use, and what we see is the more we take antibiotics, the bacteria that survive are resistant to our antibiotics. And so this shows you the MRSA infection, which is the what some people know as a flesh-eating bacteria. And it's resistant to our antibiotics, which is what makes it kind of dangerous because it's hard to get rid of since we don't have the drug to kill it. And then here I have bird beak and flower shape. So this is the flower, and this is the bird beak, right? This is the flower, this is the bird beak. So you can see they're co-evolving. As flower shape changes, bird beaks change. So that also shows evolution, but kind of in a close relationship level of evolution. Now, one thing that does not prove evolution, that's not evidence, is something we call analogous structure. So a lot of people that are not scientists would go, oh, flying. This thing flies and that thing flies. This insect flies, this bird flies. Oh, they must be related to each other because they both fly. That answer is no. And that's what we call the same function, right? So the body parts that have a different structure but the same function. If we analyze the wing of this insect and the wing of this bird, totally different. This bird has bones. This insect does not even have bones. So totally different anatomy. And so they are not related to each other. Again, way back in the past at the, fish level, but nothing on the land level. They are not related to each other. So just because they both fly does not mean that they have common ancestry. But a lot of people like to think this way, especially for me, the non-scientists. So just remember, just because everything swims doesn't mean they're related, right? A whale and a fish is not related to each other at all because a whale is a mammal and a fish is a fish. So even though they both swim, doesn't mean that they have common ancestry. And that would be something, again, to think about, and no, not common ancestry, just because they do the same thing. All right, that is our evidence of evolution. Again, I know it's long, but it's a lot because there's a lot of evidence, and hopefully you see that.